Welcome. My name is Joni Parsons. I'm co-creator of Rebel 11 along with Monica Smith. She is in Switzerland enjoying her 11th wedding anniversary, which is lovely. We're so happy that you're here today. So creativity, I'm so excited to talk about it with Diane today. Everyone has it, but we rarely use it. You know, I've always been creative since I was a really little girl, but rarely have I given myself the space or the time to really go inside and be more creative and explore it fully. I also wanted to share, in contrast, a little story about my mom, who said, she goes, Joni, I'm not creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body. She goes, are you ready? But I can make a damn good stick man. And do you know what? She did. So creativity, it's everywhere. Whether you are a writer, an artist, a gardener. I went and picked these out today from my garden. So that is one of my creative expressions. And I know someone in the audience today is here that it expresses her creativity in the kitchen, in a beautiful bounty of vegetables from her garden and the local farmers market. Like I said, creativity is everywhere. And creativity is a journey. And what if we had pillars to take us through this journey, and that those pillars, that commitment, could also change your life for good and with more joy? That's why we're here today. And I'm so excited to welcome Diane Sherman. Diane, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on Rebel 11 today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here and nice to meet some of you, though I can't see you. If you're willing, I always love to see people's face because, you know, we live in a real world, and yet there's Anna. Hello.
Hi, Anna.
Jeannie. Hey, Jeannie. Good to see you. Lisa True, Denise, Sherry. Yeah, so it's great to be here. And Joni, thank you for having me and just being part of this Rebel 11 community where you guys are doing such amazing things with women all over the world. You know, it's
yes,
like,
women all over the world. It's just so lovely to have this community now. Diane, I'd like to get started by asking you, tell us about your philosophy on creativity.
So my philosophy has developed over my lifetime, really. I was a really creative kid, and yet I could never marry just one discipline. So I was a mover, a dancer, and a yogi, and I still am, and a writer and a visual artist. And I always felt like I had to choose. You know, there's that idea of like, oh, you've got to choose your discipline. But then it was like, no, I just couldn't do it. So over all these years, I would say like the last 30 years, really, I've been steadily continuing my practices as a writer and a mover. And I've taught yoga for over 20 years and a visual artist. And now I'm teaching a creative process that marries the three modalities. So it's like, we've got movement, which addresses the physical body, and we live in a physical body, right? Without the physical body, we don't have anything. Then we've got, excuse me, the visual art, which in my mind relates to the heart. It's the place where we express emotion and our feelings. And so through paint and drawing and visual art, there's this expression of the internal felt sense of life, the emotions. And then writing relates to the mind and the mental body. And so that integration, which then comes back to the yogic practice, is body, heart, mind. We are trying to integrate as human beings this body, heart, mind. And so in my own methodology of just understanding life through the creative process, I feel like, oh, I have been able to integrate body, heart, mind through these different creative practices. And then that's what I teach.
Diane, I love that so much because that integration is so important to get to the essence of who and what we are through that creative expression, through everything that's going on in our mind. And, so often we don't move our body, but once we do, like, even if you just shake,
right?
shake for a while, there's something that happens in your body that you can express in a different way through art and visuals. We have so much to get through today. Let's go ahead and start with number one.
Okay, so here's the thing that I didn't say, and this is what we're going to talk about today, is that then what I did is I studied my own process. These 7 pillars, there are pillars of the creative process that exist out there through, other methodologies. But what I've come up with is just through my own study of what I've done, and it relates across all the disciplines. So the very first pillar is play. And I think we're going to see a slide here. Yeah. So play is the first pillar of the creative process. And the creative process, whether it's through, art, whether it's, visual art, movement, or writing, really play is a foundational way of being in the world. And so in the teaching and in my own teaching to myself, really, my way of being is to take us all back to our inner 7-year-old, because right there, before we got schooled out of how we just naturally play, there is a freedom that the inner child has, where we're like, oh, I'm going to try this. And, kids paint their houses purple, and, the elephant's yellow, and faces are blue. And it's perfectly perfect in that way. And so play to me is a foundational piece. It literally is the foundation of the creative process. And so if we can actually get into the fun, felt sense of play in the body, like how we move our bodies. I mean, you guys right there, you might just sit at your desk and like roll your wrists around, like play with you. Yeah, like play with your hands and your fingers, and just a little like, oh, a shimmy shimmy into your shoulders. Like, oh yes, I live in a body, right? And then how can we take that into life? Like sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'm in the grocery store and, I'll hear a good beat and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, got to move the hips and shake it. So play, you can see this is, so just so everybody knows, these are snippets of my journal. And so, in the visual art, there's the play with color and line, and often in the methods that I've worked with and really developed is I write on the page and then I cover it up with paint and I make marks on top. And then this has a little bit of collage pieces on top. So it's a lot of play, which then leads to, what do kids naturally do, right? They're playing house, they're figuring things out. And then it goes right into, curiosity. So then we get curious, right? There's this natural leading into the world. Kids are trying to figure out life through play. And this is when we return to that place of innocence and we open our minds to possibility, because what happens for adults, like we literally get schooled out of our openness because we think we have to know things. We think we have to know the answer. And this creative process is about going back to not knowing. And then curiosity gets us tuned into that place of like, what am I curious about?
Mm-hmm.
What is piquing my interest? Like last year, I had COVID, and I had long haul COVID, and I literally sat around in my garden for a couple months, and I got really curious about the bees and just watching the bees and how they flitted from flower to flower, and the lavender and the bee balm and the black-eyed Susans. And it was like this whole world that when we start to focus on something and we're curious about it, we want to know more. And then our curiosity, it leads us deeper into our own questions, because each of us is here with a certain, a certain essence to bloom into this lifetime. And every single one of us is different, just like every single flower, even though they may look the same, they're all a little different. And we're really, truly here to bloom into ourselves. So
I think
curiosity.
that's such an important point, that we're here to bloom into ourselves and
Mhm.
to ask those questions and have curiosity around who we are, why we are. And, I think that you express this in such a beautiful way through color and art, Diane. I love the expression that you're saying, what you're saying here today.
Well, thank you. And, I think the curiosity has led me to really ask those deeper questions about life. And that's the other piece about this process that, or I would say my own methodology, is it's really married to deep self-inquiry, which, when creative practice is married to deep self-inquiry, there is the unlocking of our own inner wisdom that's unique to each one of us, right? So curiosity leads to experimentation. And experimentation, can be a whole host of things, but sometimes we get caught up in wanting things to work out immediately, right? We live in such a fast food, fast answer, fast information, I've got the answer world. And experimentation is about not knowing and kind of having to go through failure to find our own answers. Failure in the sense of, oh, well, that didn't turn out the way I wanted, or, oh, I didn't know how the materials would actually respond when I did that, or, oh, I didn't like, how that drawing turned out, or the color mixing. But it's really only through experimenting that we find our own answers. I mean, wouldn't you say that?
And Diane, I would say that it's not really failing as much as it is the exploration to a new expression of yourself.
Absolutely. And the only reason I say failing is because that's sometimes what comes up in the mind, that,
That's
oh,
true.
I failed, right? I did, especially for a recovering perfectionist. If you're a recovering perfectionist, it can feel like failing. But and I completely agree with you. We're experimenting to find our own next expression.
Right.
And I kind of liken it to scientists, really. Like, scientists go into the lab and they're doing all these controlled experiments with their media, and they don't know what's going to come out. And that's actually also the edge of excitement, because there's possibility. And so when it can be as simple as, and this is actually not so simple, right? Mixing colors. Like, mixing colors is a whole science in and of itself. And yet it can be very intuitive. And many artists over time have spent years and years just learning to find their own palette and express themselves that way.
Well, I have to say, I feel like you have developed your palette. It's so beautiful and bright and cheerful. And I just want to point out some of the words on this slide. I am guided when I listen, ask questions, pray, my higher self, speak your reality. I mean, those are all so beautiful and such lovely reminders of creative expression and life itself.
Yes, and Joni, I think this is the thing that I'm recognizing, that this creative process and what I call radical creativity is a practice. It's like yoga is a practice, meditation is a practice. Creative process is a practice that, can inform us and also show us where our edges are. Like, our edges, and what I mean by that is our edges of being a recovering perfectionist, or, finding that, or experiencing our deep inner critic that's like, well, that sucks, and the ways that we get blocked, or the resistance to wanting to mess something up. There's a really tangible feedback loop in the creative process
Mhm.
that I've experienced many times, and it's it's what gives us our own very personal and individual teaching. And I think this is the thing. I've been somebody who has looked outside for years for teachers, and yet have done a very internal process. And I've had amazing teachers, across many disciplines, like amazing teachers. And ultimately, I think that we are all our own teacher when we go inside.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
love, though, the fact that you have had teachers over the years and inspiration from others to see their journey and their expression to define our own. For instance, one of my creative expressions, as I mentioned, is flowers and bouquets. And I'm going to a conference on how to make better bouquets. I mean, and so that I can find my own beauty in my creative expression with color in bouquets, and things that I plant in my garden next year will be different. And so as I become like a mini urban flower grower, I want to know what else I can include. So anyway, I'm off to New York tomorrow for that event.
oh, wow,
So
that's
that's
what you're
exciting.
doing. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love
Yep,
that.
creative expression in another
Yeah.
way.
Well, and
Okay.
I want to say I think teachers are really important, not to say like we can't, we need teachers and guides, absolutely. But our deepest answers to our
Absolutely.
deepest questions
Are right here.
are ours,
Yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Okay, let's go on to number 4.
Okay, so experimentation. So we've talked about that. And this comes in, it's not, again, just in the creative arts. It's like, oh, well, you're making a new recipe. Maybe you don't have all the ingredients. You just do your little experiment. And you, with the flower bouquet, we learn some principles, and then we experiment with our own style. Like, ooh, I'm going to put this in here and that color and that height, kind of thing,
Exactly.
So, which leads to the next place, which is risk taking. So risk taking, and I love that this slide is the one for risk taking, because it's got the oar out there in the water. And it's like, oh yeah, we risk taking is stepping into the place where we feel a little more uncomfortable, and we're taking a bigger risk. And it may look like putting ourselves out there in the world in a way that we might not otherwise. Or it may be that we speak our truth, like, let's take it to the life scale. We speak our truth with someone where we might feel a little nervous about doing that, or we set a boundary that's not a natural boundary, but it's so that we are tending to our own care. So so bringing it back to creative process, risk taking comes from experimentation. It's like, oh, where did my experiments lead me?
Mhm.
And where do I want to push my edges consciously, right? So, okay, I want to really, like, I'll just give my personal process in the last year and a half with visual art. I've been really wanting to deepen into my abstract painting. And so, I took some classes, because I'm like, all right, what make up the elemental qualities of a good abstract? We think, I don't know about you all, but, an abstract seems like, oh, it couldn't be that hard. I mean, I've been doing a lot of art for most of my life. And it's like, okay, well, how hard can an abstract be? They're really hard to get a good one that hangs together, that feels like it's got good depth, some nice contrast, is interesting, and has like this quality of tension but isn't just like paint slapped on a canvas. And so I've noticed for myself, like this desire to express something through abstraction has pushed me to take risks and find new tools and do things in ways that I have not felt comfortable. And I haven't, like my inner perfectionist is like, wow, I pretty much haven't liked a lot of the paintings that I've done in the last year and a half.
So Diane, so this slide says let go of control. Have you had to do that?
Well, I've been trying, I've been trying to let go of control.
I think that's so appropriate.
That is hilarious. And that's exactly it. But what is that? And I have to say, it's such an easy phrase to throw out there, let go of control. But what does it really mean, right? And how is it embodied? How is it embodied physically, emotionally, and mentally? And as much as I may think I'm letting go of control, there's these ways that I'm still holding onto control and trying to control perception. And this is true in our lives. Like, think about if we are in relationship with someone, whatever, a friend, a love, a close loved one, family. Like when we feel vulnerable, their risk connects to vulnerability. When we feel vulnerable, there is a quality of feeling risk, that I'm going to take this risk to speak my feelings or to speak my truth. And the risk is possible rejection or feeling foolish or feeling like I might get hurt in some way. And so when we bring this back to the creative arts, like if we're writing or dancing and moving our bodies or doing visual art, if we take the risk, then the bigger risk is to share ourselves creatively with the world. We share a poem with someone, we risk judgment, right? We share a painting that we've done. Again, we risk someone else's opinion and judgment and rejection. Like that's the biggest thing. I think we're all tenderhearted. And the reason I believe when it's a creative act that we're sharing, or we do a dance in front of someone, really vulnerable, because it's like, oh, here I am moving my body. It's that our creative art comes from within. So we are literally sharing a piece of ourselves, which feels risky and feels vulnerable. Yeah.
And I have to say, though, about that, I just had an experience where I took on an event here in Seattle called Seattle Dances. And I had to learn a dance and then dance in front of an audience and then also, an online audience, thousands of people. And that risk it took all of my heart to get through that process over 3 months, but it was the most rewarding, heartfelt, stepping into my power than I've had in years, Diane. And it was because I took a risk. I mean, in the beginning, when they asked me to do that, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can. This is hard, getting up in front of all these people. But taking that risk was so beneficial to my confidence, to showing up, and to thinking of myself in a new way.
Well, you're leading right into the next piece.
And that wasn't even planned. So what is number 5?
Well, so the next place is that we go to discovery, right? And we discover our own method, our own, like we're sticking with the creative arts. We discover our own form of expression through our physicality, through our visual art, our mark making, our lines, our color choices. Some people's palettes are going to be like, mine's a really bright palette. Some people have a really subtle and subdued and quiet palette. And this is what I love about the creative arts. It's like we all have these different expressions of the essence of who we are. And then in writing, you know, we all have our voice of writing that is our natural voice. And so when I teach the writing portion of my creative process, I have people read out loud because, and to practice reading their writing out loud, because we all have this rhythm. It's like, oh, what's your rhythm? What's the cadence of your own words? And what are the words that you're naturally drawn to? Like in my own writing, I tend to like sort of I feel like I have a little bit of an inner rapper. Like sometimes I get into like sort of like this inner rapper rhythm, you know, and I love alliteration and, you know, the way words can fall like a fountain. And I mean, I can sometimes just trip on how the words sound. I don't even care if they make sense. So, and we all, and that's sort of this curiosity, right? Going back to what are you curious about in your own creative artistic expression? Again, whether it's through a creative form like this, the arts, or through your gardening, or through your, you know, how you engage with the world. So discovery really comes out of this process. And then when we make our own discoveries, and so this is what's happening with my abstract art stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm discovering some of the things that light me up from inside about abstraction. You know, it's like, oh, I like lots of layering. I still love, you know, a lot of color. And it's always great to take classes from people who do things really differently from you, because it stretches you, right? Like for me, it'd be really great to take a class from someone who's pretty much in black and white.
Well, I mean, you know, so to take something from your art here, it's like there will always be a new mountain to climb. And that's true. Anytime you want to approach something in a new way, it's a mountain in front of you to discover.
Yes. Yeah. And no matter what it is, like I'm also right now in a business course. Oh my gosh. And you know, it's its own creative process, right? We think of the creative arts like this is where creativity sort of gets locked away in our culture. But the biggest thing we're creating is our lives. Like we create our lives, every thought, every word, every decision we make every day. We're in a creative process. And that's why the self-reflective piece of this process to me really brings in the yogic perspective, because, you know, how consciously are we creating our lives? And can we be as conscious as possible so that we're going to use up this life in the best way we could, and like squeeze the juice out of our own life before we leave the planet.
What is that Mary Oliver quote? It's
it's the summer day. Sorry, it's like, and what will you do with your one wild and precious life?
You know, I just want to add to that. The other thing that I do quite a bit with Monica, who is our co-creator of Rebel 11, is walk ancient trails. And we've been doing that, you know, for years in various places. And, you know, one thing you realize when you walk ancient trails and you see something, for instance, like you've walked the Inca Trail into Machu Picchu, you understand that the only thing that we know is life and death, right? And that there's other civilizations before you and after you. How are you going to live your life? I mean, I'm so moved by that. How are you going to live your one precious life? And that is such a gift to remember that we have a choice on how to do that and how to express it daily.
Yeah, it's really true. It's true. And, you know, it's easy to get sort of overwhelmed, and especially right now in the chaos
Yeah.
world and so much heaviness. But and I think that's the other thing, like I really truly take refuge in my creative process. Like I
Mhm.
literally take refuge in going into the creative process, because it is, and this is bringing it back to the joy, it is a way to create so much joy, you
Yeah.
know, to move to a song that you like. So I just want to encourage all of you on this call, like find a song today that you love and shake your booty, like
Shake
do
your
it.
booty.
Do it. Yeah, seriously. Like shake it in your kitchen while you're making your tea, while you're like, my students know this. I'm like, all right, we're gonna move. We don't do anything before, like we move before we do everything, because there's an enlivening of the body, and musicians, they're speaking to us through vibration, and different vibrations activate different parts of our physical being. So, and just another really easy sort of takeaway for us is like just sort of opening your eyes to the color around you, because now most of us here are in summer, right? Oh yeah, like if you have a song you want to put it in the chat for us, do. Like, thank you for sharing that, Joni. That's great. Like if anybody else has a song to share, but I just want to say, like, opening your eyes to the color around you, because if you've lived with winter, some of us up here live with winter, right now is like this magical time where the world is opening to color, and it's kind of like a discovery all over again. Like, oh wow.
It really is.
you know
Yeah, when we live in the gray a lot in the Seattle and Washington State area, any type of color or blue sky is like, oh my God, this is so
right.
amazing. So with that,
Oh,
let's go on to number 6.
yes. So discovery leading to surrender. So what do I mean by surrender? Surrender is this place of, like, let's say we've made our own discovery, right? We've come up with something. Like, I'll talk about my writing practice. Like, I'm in a poetry collective. There's just 4 of us, and we meet every other week, and we share, we write poems, and then we share our poems. And this whole rapper girl, has come out, and they were like, and I kind of poo-pooed my inner rapper, and they were like, no, these are so fun and playful, and like they say, they have a little, like they drop a little bit of wisdom in them. And so I've started embracing this discovery and surrendering. This is what I mean by it. I've surrendered to the fact that it comes really easily. And I think sometimes when things come really easily to us, whatever that is for any of you, we sometimes discount that, right? It's too easy. Like, oh, well, I just do that. Well, what you do is something that somebody else may not be able to do so well. Like, somebody who loves spreadsheets. Oh my God, I'm like, please help me. I can't do spreadsheets very well, or whatever it is. So the surrendering is this surrender to ownership of what comes easily and what we're also discovering, and then allowing ourselves to move in the flow and the stream of discovery. It's like we make a discovery and then we surrender into the flow of that. Am I making sense? I'm not totally
Yes, I love it. I love that so much. Because so we're so tight sometimes.
sure.
We keep doing the same things all the time and do it over and over and over,
Yes.
instead of just surrendering or just bringing our shoulders down and looking at things in a new way. In fact, I was talking to my cousin yesterday about something, and we were talking about ways to surrender. And this is such a beautiful gift to remember, is that we can, surrender, and it's okay to be in a different space in your creativity or in your life. It's okay.
Well, and I think there is a little twinge of discomfort. It's not like risk taking, because we've already taken the risk, right? We've gone through that discomfort of the risk taking, and then we have the discovery, which helps us feel a little more confident. And then the surrender is kind of to lean into our own way of doing things. Like this whole process that I'm explaining, I have really studied my process and synthesized this body, heart, mind, writing, movement, visual art, and I've looked at it and now am able to articulate it. And I think that's part of what I mean. It's like, oh, I'm surrendering to this. This is a method that is coming through me, and it's like, oh, it is its own thing. And I think we all have that. What is it we're here to express and to synthesize and to put together? And that's why, like, the way that I actually teach creative process, like, I'm not teaching you how to paint a perfect painting or how to write the perfect poem. My interest is in supporting people to unlock their own inner creative and their own inner wisdom through the creative process. And everybody's going to have a different way of making their marks and writing their, stories and moving their bodies. And yet somehow it'll come together in the form of them, right? Rather than here's my formula and you copy me, So which leads to the next place.
Yes, perfect timing. Because we want to do that little exercise,
Yes.
Diane. So why don't we talk about this for about 3 or 4 minutes?
Okay, well, the next, so we've got, the next one is personal transformation, which is exactly what you articulated about doing the dance thing. Like you said it. Oh, I stepped in, I leaned in, you were like, oh no, I don't know if I can do this. It's going to be in front of all these people and then thousands online. And what I heard you say is, I felt so good, so empowered and confident, and it transformed you.
It did transform me.
This is exactly the thing. It's like when we lean in and we actually move through the obstacles that will come up, because they will. Like, here's some of the obstacles. It's like self-doubt, resistance, fear, the inner critic, the inner rebel, like, well, I know better than that, or the inner.
Can I just add something here on this slide? We imprison ourselves with our thoughts and patterns of behavior. And that's one thing I did was with the dance, is that I had to get out of prison. So, but it's true. I mean, I think that I'm glad that that's on there. Hannah from our office did such a great job matching your artwork with what we're talking about here.
Totally. And I think that this is exactly it. It's like, we do have the power to free ourselves, and it's a process.
It's a process.
It's a true process. And the personal transformation, like my journals,
Can you just open that up, Diane, and share some of, I mean, this is so amazing. I have to say, this is one thing that gets me every single time I talk to Diane. She opens this up and I'm like, oh my God.
Right. So I have these, so this is, this is actually last year's journal where I had, let's see, COVID. And then, I had a lot of time to journal, because I was asking also a lot of questions, and I was also trying to find like some sense of calm And there is, just in the actual act of doodling and drawing and painting and mark making, there is something that happens in your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system that is really soothing to the body, right? And so like this, I'm going to show this one too. And, you know, then it's just a constant exploration of mark making and little notes. And there's Anna. Anna's actually, she's been a very active participant in my things. Here's,
oh my
you
gosh,
know,
that is amazing. That's
right?
so beautiful.
And then we create, and here's the other thing, you guys, I just love that we create our own worlds. And literally when we create our own worlds and we have a place to express some of the darkness, right? Like, oh, this is a safe place to express the darkness. And we have a lot of feelings that are coming up right now. I mean, if ever there were a time to have a tool. Oh, look, this, I just love, I found this. So my strawberries are just now starting to ripen in my yard. And this is last year in June. And I'm like, oh, there was the first strawberry. And, you know, here's some of my writing.
Diane, this is, I mean, I am so inspired. I can hardly stand it. I mean, I am so inspired by your use of color and the emotion and all of the components of the pillars, and how that expression of just getting it on paper makes us more full, and
Yeah.
to be able to synthesize our emotions in that way is just so powerful.
Well, and it is, and I want to say, like, I'm going to show you this one. This is my current journal, right, Anna? So this one, look at this. And the other thing I just want to say too is, like, this is just maybe a couple weeks ago. It's the peony time, right? It's the time of the peonies. And the other thing, right? I know Sherry's like, oh yeah, there's the peonies. Here's another one. This is a blind contour drawing of the peony.
Beautiful.
And what I love about this simple act is, oh, and look, this is a friend of mine. She did a retirement party, and it was so, this is Beth, and she had this epic retirement party. And so I'm like, epic, epic, epic. And she was like, it's going to be epic. And I'm like, okay, it's epic. And so when we look back, the other thing is that this is not done yet, but I'm in process here. You can see the scribbling underneath, and then I'll go in and do more. But and I actually ended up making this book, you guys, because I found a new journal that I couldn't find again. So then I decided to actually make the book. So that was a crazy process to do, but
we'll be talking about more of that.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother thing. But
I think this is a really good time to do a little bit of creative work right here, right now.
Okay, are you guys game?
I am.
It is? Okay, well, I'm just gonna say, oh, look, there's Wendy. Hi, Wendy. Okay, I'm gonna say, let's all get, oh, look at you. Yes, nice, right? Yeah, let's do this before we do anything, because we have time. We have like we have a little bit. Yep. Let's stand up.
Okay.
Stand up. And just do a little wiggle. Yes, thank you, people. Shake it out. Like, we don't have any tunes at the moment, but yeah, there we go. Just do your own little wiggle, wiggle. Get some breath going. Feel your feet, maybe a little jumping up and down. A little bit of breath. Shake anything out. And just notice how you feel. Like, how's your body today? Yeah. All right. And then we're going to slow. Nice, Jeannie.
That feels so good.
Right? Just a little tiny bit. It's like, oh, yeah, there's my body. We live in a body.
We forget sometimes.
We need a piece of paper, a pen. So we're going to do two things. They're pretty quick. And this practice, and some of you have done this with me before, but this practice it's called blind contour drawing. And the idea of it is that you're going to take your pen and we're going to look at something. And what we're all going to do is we're going to place our hand on the desk and, place it in a way that you can see the multiple fingers, right? And just relax your hand on the desk. You know how artists draw hands? That's what we're going to do. So we're going to look at our own hand. And then the blind contour drawing, before we do anything, here's the principle. That you take your pen and you want to make sure that the paper isn't going to move. So you might even hold your paper with the other hand that you're drawing. And then you're going to trace the lines of your fingers and your fingernails, never looking at your paper. You're not going to look down at your paper. You're just going to look at your hand and trace as though your hand, your pen is running along all the little lines of your fingers and your fingernails and in and out. And we'll do it for maybe 2 minutes, maybe. And then we'll be done. So keep the pen on the paper the whole time. It's one continuous line. So are we ready? You guys are going to get ready?
Do you do detail or just around your hand?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So like when I'm looking at my hand, I'm just going to keep my pen on the paper and I'm going to try to get the little lines in my knuckles and around, and it's going to come out like, whoa, that got really distorted, but that's some of the fun. The practice is about paying attention. It's really about paying attention and trying to feel the details with your pen and your eye connecting. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Are you saying trace around your hand like that? How do you get little lines and things if you're
yeah, so what I'm saying is, like, I'm looking at my hand, or let's say it's not even the hand. Let's say it were this. Let's just say it's going to be the pens in my cup, right? That I would draw, I'd be looking at this and I'm drawing and I'm like going up and down and in and out with my pen on the paper. And I'm never looking at the paper. So, the hand is attached to the body. So we sort of do look down. If you have another object you want to do a blind contour of, you can, right?
That's fine. It was the word trace. I thought it was writing around my hand.
Yes. Well, yeah, that was a little confusing. So yeah,
that's what I thought too, Sherry. So just so you
know.
Oh,
good. Okay. So yeah, so that's a great distinction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's do 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll time us, okay?
Okay.
All right, so hang on, not quite right. We're gonna do 2 minutes. All right, here we go. So start your line work and let's go. Let's see what we get. And let it try to be loose with, like, think about your pen, the feel of dancing on the paper, that you're holding it loosely. You're just enjoying looking at your own hand, suddenly seeing how it's way older than you thought. Just kidding.
Oh, Diane.
But not. Like, oh, it's quite wrinkly. And you're not looking at the paper. You just keep looking at your hand and then keep your pen moving. And you're just trying to get in as much detail as possible in these 2 minutes. It's going to be short. Like, it's going to be over before you know it.
What's your dog's name that keeps passing by?
Oh, that is Benji. He's so cute. He's a little nervous. A little Benji dog. And then keep breathing. Remember to breathe.
Okay, everybody takes a deep breath.
Right.
That was a good reminder. Thank you.
Right. It's like, because that's the other way we get tight. We stop breathing. We're like, oh my God, am I doing it right? Is this okay? Keep the pen dancing, like loose. Like, okay. And then we are done. All right. So let's take a look. Take a look down at your paper. See what you got. And then if you're willing to put your video up, yeah, let's see what you got. Oh, nice.
Okay, so Hannah, can you put a pin on some of these? Share Anna and Cynthia. And oh wow, that's amazing. Okay, there's Diane's. Let's see Sherry's.
Nice, everybody. Nice
Let's see.
job.
Hold on, Cynthia. Let me see if I can put yours up there. Great. Anna, will you put yours up?
Oh, there's
please?
Wendy. Hi, Wendy. Lift it up a little higher, Wendy.
I did flowers because I have like
Awesome.
a pot of
Nice.
chrysanthemums.
Nice.
Very nice.
Everyone. Yeah.
Sherry, will you put yours up? Sherry, will you put yours up? Great.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay, is there anybody else?
See
Let's
the
see.
detail.
Denise, let me show yours.
Nice, Denise.
Great. Angela,
Beautiful.
so fun. Patricia, hold on. Great. And then I did roses, but it's just funny here. Let me see if I can show mine here.
Let's
Because
see.
the roses are replace pen. Can you see that? I have so much light on here.
Yeah, it's too light. Oh, there, a little bit. Oh, yes. Wow.
Anyway, so from the flowers I showed you earlier. So
Yes. So can you feel how you guys get the detail, right? It's this detail, and we get the essence in a blind contour. So the beauty about practicing blind contour is that you start to really hone the skill of paying attention and then coordinating your eye to your hand. And like, I have never felt like I've been a good drawer, like just never. And yet blind contour has allowed me to find this way to feel like, oh, I can access drawing, you know, and that I feel fairly decent about it, you know? Yeah.
well, that was super fun. I have to say, I was surprised. I was surprised by that experiment. And we have a couple of minutes here. We're going to wrap up right by 9 o'clock. But does anybody have a quick question for Diane that you could put in the chat? As you're putting something in the chat, I just wanted to let you know, and we'll be talking about this more in a moment, that Diane and I are going to be doing a retreat in January to kick off the year. I'm so excited about that. So excited.
Yeah, me too.
And but we'll tell you about that in a moment. Does anybody have any questions?
Sherry had a question.
Oh, okay, Sherry.
You have to unmute.
Just super fast. In your journal, when you were showing us the peonies, the second one that went across the the 2 pages,
Yeah.
that was all done this way by you not looking at it.
Yes, let's just see it that one. I mean, you want to remember that I've been doing this for years.
For years.
Right? So, and now the color I put in afterwards, but all the line work was all blind contour. And so, you know, I've developed the skill of being able to track where my hand is in the paper. But I find, here's the thing, Sherry, I find that if I start to look at the page and then I start to do the whole thing where like, oh, compare and look, then my inner critic comes out and it's like, oh, and I get tight. So what I've come to is like, I'd rather stay loose and have it be an expression of a peony through me rather than an actual peony. Like I don't want, you know, I'm not interested in representing it perfectly, you know. Yeah.
Diane, I have to say, this has been the most engaging, colorful hour that I've had in a long time. And I am just so inspired and can't wait to do more with you.